Well, thank you very much for sitting down with us today, Andrew.
It's great to be here, Mike.
So tell me, you have a very strong legal background. Tell us about how you got into that and why it is that you focus on space policy and space law.
Sure. So I have a physics background, actually. From undergrad, I worked in a solid-state research laboratory for a couple of years, got a degree in physics, but I also had a company when I was undergrad, and I really enjoyed the business and building my own business, and found that while I love physics and astrophysics, originally when I went to school I was astrophysics, but then sort of transitioned into the solid state as well. So I had that sort of passion, but then I also had a passion for business. So I sort of came to the realization that maybe law was something where I could marry both those passions, a passion for science and engineering, and also an interest in business. So I ended up going to law school specifically to work in intellectual property, kind of leveraging that science and technology background. And I'm from Florida, Space Coast and all that. So I have a really strong, love of space and science. Watch Star Trek all the time. I remember watching the night launches of the space shuttle, as it kind of goes over the Atlantic Ocean and just makes this incredible streak. And so I've always been very interested in that. And I remember in my first year at law school, one of my professors kind of talking just kind of offhand about, the law that applies to space. And I was like, what? I can do that? Okay. So that kind of caused me to pivot a little bit into focusing on space, focusing on the legal aspects of space, and also applying kind of my intellectual property chops to that. So I had the opportunity to work with Mass Space Systems and intern with them and help them with their intellectual property, and then that sort of inspired me to start my blog, IP in Space, which is about intellectual property and space law issues, and then just kind of cool space stuff in general. And the reason that I write that is basically because I think a lot of people treat, to some degree, they definitely treat space, they definitely treat the law as sort of a priesthood, and to a lesser extent, people treat space, aerospace, as sort of a priesthood. And I, in general, I think that shouldn't be the way. I think that it's our sort of imperative to kind of share our knowledge with everybody, and so my blog is designed to kind of take my experiences and explain in simple terms and hopefully interesting terms, sort of intellectual patent property, patent law, and as well as kind of the space issues and how those two things interact.
At what point was it that you realized that you were able to affect this sort of thing, and how was it that it came about that you started working with Maston? And at the same time, do you have anyone else out there who you're helping with intellectual property?
Those are really good questions. Actually, Colin Ake loves to tell the story of how I came to work at Maston. Basically, like I said, I became very interested in space law and intellectual property in law school, and just said, okay, normally after your second year of law school, you go and do an internship, either with a law firm or with a company. And I said, well, I want to work with a space company. I want to do something that's related to space. So I just called everybody and said, I have these skills, you should hire me. And I called Colin and talked to him on the phone, and he was like, well, we don't have any money, but you can talk to the Florida Space Grant Consortium. Maybe if they can get you some money, then maybe you can come do it. And I was like, okay. And so I got off the phone and I called them, and basically just really sort of pushed them into taking me on, because they recognized that they had that need, but it's lower on the priority list than building a vehicle. So I was able to sort of help, kind of pave my own way, and then really, and I hopefully add some value there.
What is on the future horizon? What sort of areas do you want to work on and focus on? And do you only want to work for companies, or do you have any sort of aspirations to help in Congress and to actually have laws passed and reform other laws?
So right now, I'm focusing on sort of building an intellectual property practice that focuses on aerospace and on sort of new emerging technologies in general. because I have my patent agency, so I can kind of help there, and then with my colleagues at my law firm can sort of offer more services. And so I'm focusing on sort of helping additional companies in the new space arena there. It would be very interesting to help on a policy front, because I try to write things that are not overly political. That for my blog, I just kind of I try to my focus is very much on the education aspects of where does space begin? Well, we don't really know from a legal standpoint, what patent rights do you have if you on a satellite that's orbiting the Earth? Those sorts of issues. But there are a lot of issues there that are either poorly understood on a policy level, I believe, or just kind of ignored. And I would very much like to if I had the opportunity to be a part of that conversation, I would definitely I would jump at the chance.